How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to 1IQ. Brendon here coming at you with my mock draft 2.0 as we are going into the championship round, getting into this mock draft as we have a little bit more of the season coming to a close. Only three more games total of professional NFL football remaining, and then we get into the AFL, I believe, or the UFL, whatever they're calling that one, which I'm sure is going to be fun. But first, let's get in look at this mock draft. First pick, obviously, the Chicago Bears have it due to the Carolina Panthers in that trade last year, and I have the Chicago Bears selecting quarterback Caleb Williams out of USC. The Bears, they ultimately need to look at this and go, do we want to go for greatness or do we want to just continue on with mediocrity? And frankly, I think the Chicago Bears team, they're going to look at Caleb Williams and go, we are going to ride with him, and if he can get to the level that we think he can, we're going to have success for 10, 15 years down the road, as opposed to Justin Fields, where they might only have a few years of up and then a lot of years of down, and then just constant roller coaster. Bears ultimately make that move. In terms of what is going to happen with Justin Fields, I believe the price is going to be a second round pick, so unfortunately, the Bears do not get an extra pick in this year's draft or in the first round, like some other people have suggested. I know Mel Kiper looked at it and said that the Falcons might trade pick number 8 to the Chicago Bears for that. I don't think that's realistic. But moving on to pick number 2, the Washington Commanders. This is going to be an interesting pick because they do have Sam Howell, and I really like Sam Howell, but I think they're going to look at Drake May and go, this is just too tempting of a prospect for us to currently have available, and we can realistically go whoever our new head coach is, because currently at the time of recording they do not have a head coach currently available or hired here at the moment. And I think the new ownership group, they're going to look at this and say, hey, if we can get ourselves a young, talented superstar quarterback, let's do it, that we can put all of our eggs into that one basket. The New England Patriots up here at number 3. I don't think it's going to be much of a challenge here. I think they are going to run to the podium and select Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels, quarterback out of LSU. It is very clear that Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones are not the answers in New England. And unfortunately for Jaden Daniels, he's going to be going to a situation where he doesn't really have a whole lot of weapons around him. But it's going to be one of those things where, you know what, he's a talented quarterback. Gerard Mayo, the new head coach of the Patriots, maybe going to be bringing in some new age ideas. It's going to be really, really fun to watch and see how he can develop. And potentially, if Daniels is good enough, they might be able to win a few more games. Moving over to pick number 4, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting the best player in the draft by far, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr. This would be a dream day scenario for the Cardinals, and I think it's one that is ultimately going to realistically be really capable of happening, just because you just look at the Cardinals and they need that number one receiver. And for Kyler Murray, if he's going to be able to get that type of guy who's going to be young, he's going to be cheap, my goodness, it's going to be so much fun to watch. Now moving over to the Los Angeles Chargers, I have them selecting Malik Neighbors out of LSU. He is the second best wide receiver in this year's draft class, just behind Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. This dude is an absolute freak of nature. He literally puts up video game numbers at LSU. He is so much fun to watch. This is going to be one of those moves where it could ultimately just be so good for the Chargers, getting more young, talented wide receivers for Justin Herbert to throw the ball to. Next up, we have the New York Giants, and they ultimately kind of hoped that they were going to get Malik Neighbors, but this is ultimately going to go down to them selecting Roma Duzin, wide receiver out of Washington, go three quarterbacks back to back to back. Then we have three wide receivers all going at that point. All three of those teams really need some wide receiver help, and it's definitely going to be tough sledding for them. And if you're the Giants, no matter who your quarterback is next year, I think the Giants, if Jaden Daniels was potentially there, they would consider taking him, but they're definitely looking at trying to upgrade at that, ultimately that wide receiver spot. Then moving forward, we have the Tennessee Titans. They love what their situation is ultimately going to come here. They're going to select superstar tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, and they're going to have their tackle of the future. They drafted Peter Skoronski last year, who they ultimately moved to guard, and this is just going to be an absolute phenomenal move for the Tennessee Titans and whoever their quarterback or running back of the future is going to be. Now moving over to the Atlanta Falcons, and this is one of those teams where they need a quarterback. They're probably going to trade for a quarterback. I think they're going to be the front runner for Justin Fields, and that could be a potential big need. But taking a look at what's going to happen here, I think they are ultimately going to go out and select Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. Now, I don't think Dallas Turner is the number one edge rusher in this particular draft, but he is definitely going to go somewhere in the top 10, if not the top 15. And I think Atlanta, especially if they hire Bill Belichick as their new head coach, they are going to ultimately go with just some extra defense to really, help out and bolster that defense in what is going to be a really, really good team. Now the Chicago Bears back up on the board with their second pick in the first round, and this is where it really starts to get interesting. Olu Fashanu, he's still available on the board, but I do not think they are going to take him. I think they are going to go with Liatu Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA, to pair with Montez Sweat. I think they were also really looking at guys like Malik Neighbors and Rome Oduzin, but unfortunately neither of those two guys are there. I don't think Brock Bowers is necessarily going to be a guy that the Bears are going to be super interested in. I think they're definitely going to look at that and go, we're going to have opportunities, but I think for the Bears, they are going to go with Liatu Latu. Moving over to the Jets, I think this is probably going to be a little bit more of a shock because Olu Fashanu is still up on the board, but he has slipped massively throughout this year. And Tilasu Faanga, the offensive tackle, and I butchered that name, I apologize, out of Oregon State. And the Jets, they're pretty much looking at this going, you know what, we need help on the back end and just to get a little bit better to give, or not back end, the front end, to protect Aaron Rodgers and help give out some more rushing lanes. That was their biggest need last year. They ultimately weren't able to get it, and they get it in this particular year. Now taking a look here at the Minnesota Vikings, I think they are going to be extraordinarily happy with Terran Arnold at corner. It's one of their positions of need this particular season, and I think they're ultimately going to jump at the opportunity to go up there and get it. Now taking a look at the Denver Broncos, I think they're going to take his running mate, Kool-Aid McKinstry, back-to-back Alabama corners, and just ultimately continue up here. And then I think for the Raiders, they are also going to go up with another corner. This time it is Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Basically, all three of these teams could look to improve their secondary, and for the Raiders, that was pretty much their biggest need, which is secondary. And Cooper DeJean, he is so phenomenal, and all three of these guys, you could probably interchange any of them, and it's likely going to be a good little move for them. Now taking a look here at the New Orleans Saints, they're going to look at Fashanu and say, we are not allowing you to drop any more than you currently have, so we are happy to select you and bring you to New Orleans to help protect Derek Carr moving forward. So definitely a little bit of a drop for Fashanu, who was projected to be the top tackle this year alongside Joe Alt, but I don't think they're going to be too terribly worried about it nonetheless. I think the Indianapolis Colts, they are ultimately going to select J.C. Latham to help protect Anthony Richardson. They definitely need some other help, but I think this Colts team, they have learned from their mistakes with Obviously, going back to Andrew Luck, they saw Anthony Richardson get hurt. Granted, Anthony Richardson's style of play is kind of conducive to him potentially taking more injuries into the future, but they are definitely not going to allow it to be a situation of where it's the O line ultimately causing some of these problems. Now, taking a look here at Seattle, this is going to be a really interesting situation for them because there's no real guard here at this moment that's going to be a guy that can ultimately come out. And I genuinely think it's a possibility that we could see one of these quarterbacks of a Bo Nix, a JJ McCarthy, or a Michael Penix Jr. go here and kind of sit for a year under Geno Smith. And obviously, it's going to be a brand new head coach coming in. It's going to be a brand new offensive staff. And I think they're potentially going to want to try to develop a guy for a year. And I think we're going to see Bo Nix go to the Seattle Seahawks. He's going to be staying within the area, going ahead of JJ, going ahead of Michael Penix Jr. Definitely going to be one of those little bit of a shock type moments for a league going like, okay, we weren't really expecting that type of move. Taking a look here at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, one of their biggest needs, I felt pretty much from start of the season to now this point, is still corner. And I think Nate Wiggins is going to be a player they're going to look at and say, we are really comfortable picking him up. Now looking here at the Cincinnati Bengals, they're going to look at Brock Bowers and they're going to say, you know what, he can kind of do it all. He is that George Kittle prototype type player, and they're going to bring him in to just be a phenomenal pass catcher for the passer of Joe Burrow, and it's just going to be a really, really fun team to watch. And that offense just continues to get even scarier. And again, they're going to be losing some pieces on wide receiver. Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins likely not going to be able to bring both back, and so this is going to be one of those moments where they're going to be able to get a super talented tight end to go in there and just really dominate in the pass catching. Now taking a look here at the Los Angeles Rams, who I think definitely had more of a shock this year on what they did. I think they're going to select Armanius Mims, who is shooting up draft boards and has just been a phenomenal player all year long. And right now, he is just going to bring some very top end. I've heard people talking about him potentially being a top 10 tackle in this year's class. I don't think he's going to quite rise that high in it, but there's distinct possibilities for sure, and it's going to be really interesting to see. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is going to be a really tough one. Jermaine Trotter Jr., linebacker for Clemson, I believe is going to be their pick. I think that is way too high for him to be picked, but I don't really make the decisions. The way that I do my mock drafts is what I think the teams are ultimately going to do. I could very easily see the Steelers trading down in this year's draft to just, for instance, say a team really liked a tight or an edge rusher here at this point, and they ultimately go after that and just trying to continue right there. But ultimately, I think they're going to select Jermaine Trotter Jr. just because they need so much linebacker help. It's not even funny anymore. It's one of those things where they were just decimated by that all year long. Now taking a look here at the Miami Dolphins. And again, they're just going to need offensive line help. And I think Troy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name. Apologies to him, but I think they're going to select the guard there. It's one of their positions of need. That's definitely going to be an area where they are going to need to try and improve on, especially with Tua up front. They have an explosive set of wide receivers, this, that, and the other thing. But now taking a look here at the Philadelphia Eagles, going to be a really interesting situation here for them. I think they're going to go a little bit off board here, and I think just because they've drafted so many interior offensive, um, or pardon me, defensive linemen, and and edge rushers, I don't think they're going to go that department. I don't think they're going to go wide receiver, even though it says team needs that wide receiver. I feel like if they're going to do something like that, they're going to do it closer to the second round. But safety is also a bit of a problem. Just taking a look here at some of our top end safeties, Tyler Niven, I he's my number one safety in this year's draft class, and I feel like he could potentially be a Philadelphia Eagle moving forward. Now taking a look here at the Houston Texans, I think they are going to run up to the board because I believe this is their no, this is their first pick. Yeah, I am in. Oh, this is the pick that came from Cleveland in the Deshaun Watson trade. Um, so they are going to look at this and say, we are going to select Jared Verse to pair with Will Anderson and just have a fearsome two-man team on the edge and just have just an elite set of edge rushers just moving forward. Going to be a lot of fun to watch that unit moving forward. The Dallas Cowboys, I think they're going to select Jahan Newton just because it's not really one of their picks, but Jerry Jones really likes to take some of these super talented defensive players and, you know what, continuing to build that defense up and just go, 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 go. And to see Newton fall like he has, he's been arguably, or he is my top defensive tackle in this year's draft. I know there's the kid out of Texas. If I find correctly, it's Byron Murphy. He's going to shoot up draft boards, and I know a lot of people are really liking what they're seeing out of him. Green Bay, there's definitely going to be some question marks here at what they're going to do. I think they're going to potentially try to look at some offensive line upgrades, but they potentially could try to bring in some more wide receiver help. And ultimately, I think they're going to go with the wide receiver help for Jordan Love, just try to throw everything that they possibly can. And Brian Thomas Jr. is such a amazing player. I think that's probably going to be an area that they go. Now taking a look here at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think they found their quarterback of the future, but they are going to need a lot of help moving forward down the wide receiver route. That's going to be a pretty big need for them down the road, and I think Keenan Coleman, he is right there for the taking, kind of going to be stepping into that Mike Evans role. I'm not saying he's comparable to Mike Evans, I'm just thinking that he is similar on that type of path. Now taking a look at the Arizona Cardinals with the Houston Texans pick that they received in the trade last year. I think for them right now, obviously they got Marvin Harrison Jr. I think going after a guy like Chop Robinson to get an edge rusher on the opposite side. I know a lot of Cardinals fans really wanted Will Anderson last year. And you know what? Trying to get an edge rusher like Chop Robinson, he's going to be a guy that's going to ultimately help out a ton and just be really fun to watch moving forward. Taking a look here at the Buffalo Bills, this is a team that they have a really good defense. They just couldn't get over the hump. Continuing to look at trying to upgrade and bolster some of that, but I think they're ultimately going to try and find some offensive line help. Kingsley out of BYU, against for some of these extra tough names. I'm not even going to try and ultimately try to throw that one out there just because I don't want to butcher it terribly. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think they're probably going to spend a ton of money on bringing in a quality free agent wide receiver, and then also in the draft, Adonai Mitchell, just going to be absolutely phenomenal in that scheme and is going to be really fun to watch. Now taking a look here at the Detroit Lions, have two positions of need for quarterback. I think they are more than happy with Jared Goff. I think they are ultimately going to go with corner Kalen King just to help continue on with that secondary. Looking at the San Francisco 49ers, this is a team that is going to have to be trying to replace a ton of players moving forward. And I think Graham Barton, this is a guy that can play tackle, he can play guard, I might even be able to play center. And so he is going to come out there and do a phenomenal job at just kind of slotting in wherever they really need him to. And then taking a look here at the Baltimore Ravens, it's kind of going to be a little bit interesting, but I think they're ultimately going to take the super talented defensive tackle Byron Murphy the second out of Texas to end the draft. Just taking a look here at our full results here. Again, starting with Caleb Williams going down. So we had the three quarterbacks going off the board, and then we had the three wide receivers, and then we kind of had a little bit of the trenches with the next four picks. Then we had our run of corners, some more tackles. We had the one quarterback in Bo Nix get selected. I think Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy ultimately potentially slip a little bit more. You could potentially see maybe the Cardinals with that 27th pick might go there. It's going to be interesting. I don't think the Steelers go for a quarterback at some point in this first round. It'll be interesting to see. But that is my mock draft 2.0. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see you all in the next video.